Live on Facebook too. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
We're getting pretty good at pressing all the buttons at once.
I know. Well, Sam, I was actually thinking about this morning. Do you realize that today's webinar equals us 1 year of doing webinars together now every month? Yeah. Taking the two people who like to be in the background, just the worker bees, and making us be out on camera now for 1 year.
Well, it's been great having a partner in crime for the past year, because before that it was pretty much a solo effort. So glad to keep this going for at least another year.
Yeah.
Well,
And
everybody
today we have
loves
Liz
the two
Scott.
of you.
Oh, I mean, yes. And what better way to mark our 1 year of being live together than with Liz Scott? I mean, does it get any better than that?
It feels like an anniversary to me.
It feels like a party.
Yes.
Where's our drinks?
Guys, I don't know what's going on, but technology, it is saying my connection is timed out and it is not letting me go live on Facebook today for whatever reason. I wonder if it has to do with me being Sam, technically.
Nope, I am seeing that we are maybe live on Facebook. Let me go check the book of faces.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, happy 2024, everybody. While Sam is checking to see if we're live on Facebook, I thought I would go ahead and do, oh, yay, we are. I did it. Ooh, ooh. I thought I would do a quick introduction. Actually, Liz probably doesn't need an introduction to most of you people. She is the founder of her own accounting firm, Ace Lifeline. And she is also the co-founder of the Appy Hour, and we are super excited to have her join us today to talk about budgeting for IT services. We've got to know Liz quite well over the last year and a half, Sam and I have, and we just enjoy all the time we've got to spend with Liz.
Well, I am grateful to be able to hang out with you too. I just feel like every single time that we get a chance to be in person or in our little Zoom bubbles, just a wealth of information. And I love our industry and I want to share with our industry as much as I possibly can. And when it comes to security, the two of you have just been so welcoming and open arms and embracing of the accounting industry. So I, for one, will say on behalf of the industry, I appreciate you being in this space.
And Sam, that's why we love her, because she's always so good for our egos. That's why we love her.
It's kindness. That's what I feel every single time.
Good. Well, we got a really good one for you guys today. Sam is definitely a security expert and Liz is definitely an accounting expert. So we are looking forward to all the information that you guys have for all of us today.
Well, we are going to be having a strong conversation about what are we going to be doing in our space with 2024 security, all of these different threats. That's one of those places that whenever I think about my peers, it's one of those educational moments. How do we start having this conversation about security? And I know many of us have already started, so thank goodness. But it's really more of a dive into, well, now how do we protect ourselves? So that's why I like buddying up. I've got my thing that I'm doing in my firm. I know how to do it well, but when it comes to some of the areas that I am not the expert, that's whenever I want to pull in the superstars to help us out.
Well, it's perfect because I can't budget. So I pull in help to budgets, because that's an area that I need help. So that's great.
Well, I love the money game. That to me, it's like it's better than video games. So here we are, agenda, new year, new strategies. We're going to be talking about 2020 2024 and technology and cybersecurity, those two, oh my gosh, they go hand in hand and more so than ever before. And then we're going to be talking about this budgeting. How do we implement it? What should it look like? And then we also want to mitigate our risk, and how can Visory help in that security role? Lots of good stuff here. I will kick us off by saying, it's new year. And I am somebody who for years did not believe in having a New Year's resolution. But for the last, I would say since 2021, I have had a New Year's resolution, and it has been the same word, but I apply it differently. So my word is always intentional. And what I do with my intentionality is dependent on what my focus is for that year. So finances, I think, is a big place to pay attention and to focus. And so for many of the accountants in the industry and bookkeepers and tax professionals, this is a place where we need to be spending a lot of time is thinking about our new year and how we're going to approach it financially. So Mandy, Sam, do you have New Year's resolutions?
My word for this year is fearless, actually. And I got my sister and my daughter and my best friend all bracelets for Christmas that say fearless on them. So that's our word for 2024. And we decided that going into 2024, whatever it decides to throw at us, we're going to do it without fear and just tackle it.
Love that.
And I forgot that intentional was your word, but it actually, when I sat down and I started writing towards the end of the year, I started thinking about ways that I wanted to get better in my life. And actually, intentional was the theme that came out of that. And more specifically, intentionality in my relationships. So the words I use and the time we spend together, and just being really intentional with that, and being a really intentional listener, I think is going to be key in 2024.
Intentional applies to so many different areas. Relationships, that's a big one. Health, I mean, it's like my thing is, I didn't want to have another year that I ended and I went, what happened this last year? So intentional means I'm paying mind to what's happening in my life, and you have some control over it. So it is a very, very cool place to be able to focus. So New Year's, new strategies. When I'm talking specifically about this topic of security, this is this piece that we start saying managed IT. And what's the role there? So part of what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be dropping the veil on what do we mean by managed IT? What do we mean by security? So those are going to be some of the conversations that we're going to cover. Embracing change, we have to. We're going to talk a little bit about why is change so absolutely important whenever we're moving forward in technology. The technology awareness, oh my gosh, we have AI that has blown up in every single app that I have. Apps that didn't previously have AI now have some type of AI piece to it, whether it's a bot, whether it's a creation tool, something has been added there. So technology is definitely something that's changing. Investing in strategy. So this is being intentional with your dollars. This is making sure that you're putting a plan in place that actually will work for you. And then we've got to include security. So we are in a profession that has a ton of sensitive information, whether you're talking about financial information, social security numbers, even just what a business is profiting. All of that is information that we really need to be mindful of. We have team members that are inside of the data. We have data that's online. We have data that's on desktops. I mean, so being very mindful of security is part of this new year, new strategy plan. And I'm going to move into talking about some victories. I also want to pull in some challenges. So because this profession is near and dear to my heart, one of the things that I want to do is pull in that we have got some things to celebrate. So since 2024, if you look at the accounting industry as a whole, we are actually increasing our revenue. That means that we've had some type of growth. what we're seeing is that there is an increase in billing. So those billing rates have continued to climb. I know Intuit did a really nice poll. They do it every year that talks about in every state, what are those pro advisors specifically billing? But if you look at the greater picture, that's not just the pro advisor community, but this whole accounting industry, we are seeing an uptick in the billing rates. That's awesome. It hasn't solved for our recruiting talent. That is still an area that accounting firms are struggling. And part of what I am seeing is technology is being brought in order to solve for that talent and activities that need to be performed inside of a firm. So technology is being put into place wisely, and I love seeing the tech changes. So onboarding, offboarding talent, this is another area that, I think about security. And then here's where we really start to dive into some of these security practices. We have got systems everywhere. The accounting industry has got an overwhelmingly large amount of data to manage. And how we manage it is just as important as what we are doing with it. So it's got to be accessible. So it has to be easy to access, but we've got to have some guardrails as to who is able to access it. What are they accessing? And then, that other piece of how are we sharing information? How are we transferring information? So things to celebrate here. We are doing better as a whole in the accounting space, that we are starting to recognize, and our clients are starting to recognize the value that we are bringing. And then we've also got these challenges of we are in a cloud world, and we've got to be mindful of what we're doing, because I think that it's very clear to say that we've got bad actors, whatever you want to call them, that are paying attention more so than ever to the accounting industry. So lots of things here to look at. And here's where I want to start pulling in the budget conversation. So we're talking a little bit about dollars and some of our strategy. This is where I want to start bringing in our technology and our security conversation. So budgeting, every single year I create a new budget. In fact, I'm one of those super gurus that creates a 10-year budget. I want to be able to be thinking far ahead, but then that allows me to pivot as I need to every single year. So where do I want to go ultimately? But in the current year, what I am pulling in is a scenario where we're talking about an accounting firm that has $350,000 in annual revenue. Where should the dollars be spent? So this is just being based on some industry standards. So we've got labor at that 30% mark. One of the things that I often hear is that my peers are doing a 25% is what the staff receives of the incoming revenue. So client activities trickles down to 25% with the labor. So that kind of plays into that area there, because you've also got payroll, taxes, and then utilities. Some of us have got places that are, we've got to have a location. So that dollar amount is going to vary based on, are you at home? Are you in an actual office? So those kind of dollars are a little flexible there. That office expenses, this is where we're talking about anything that we need to think about in that space of what we are supplying our people with, how we're doing it. Technology, this is that big play. So what are the apps that we're using? How much of our budget should those include? I know there's a lot of apps that are out here in the market. So what you use really depends on what kind of firm you have, but there are some industry standards we're going to look at. Security, this is one that's new. A lot of firms haven't budgeted in security. So if you are a firm who is here with us and you're already budgeting in security, you deserve 10 points, 2 thumbs up, gold star, whatever it is that is your cookie standard. But that is something that we should all be considering, is how do we include security? How much of our budget should we include for that security percentage? Marketing, we're doing some type of marketing efforts, most of us, whether that's MailChimp or social. Other expenses, this is where we're pulling in maybe your insurance for your office. Lots of things can kind of fall underneath that. And then what should we be bringing home? So this is a general budget where we're just pulling in what are some of the industry standards that we're seeing based off of that 350,000 annual revenue. Some of you are going to be having that annual revenue at 2 people, 3 people, so the firm size is going to vary, but this is just kind of a standard smaller firm practice. You still need to be thinking about that security play. All right, Sam and Mandy, this is where I think it gets kind of fun because this is the breakdown. So I was just kind of talking about how much dollars should be associated for these areas. But of course, technology is going to play into something that I know really well. I'm going to pass it over to you whenever I start talking about security and let you handle that piece. But technology, this is the workflow, the document storage, the phone systems. Everybody's got some type of online or phone type of, it can be virtual. E-signatures, we're sending tax returns off, we're sending contracts. Some of the tools that we're using have got that included in it, but not all. Reporting, this is analytics that we're providing to our client. I know there's a lot of advisory play out there, so you need some good tools in order to help you with that. That engagement management, those proposals, marketing, again, talking about where those dollars should be spent. Workspace, I used to be Google. Now I am Microsoft, and Sam and Mandy are very aware of that migration because I'm grateful you helped me with that. And then our accounting software. Okay, so those are kind of some of the technology standards. I'm going to pass it over to you two to talk about security and what some of that breakdown should be when you're thinking about an accounting firm.
Yeah, so on the security front, you obviously have your endpoints. So you've got your laptop that you're using every day. You might have your iPad, it might be a desktop, but then there's going to be a lot of things that you might not think about every day. And that's going to be things like encryption, how you're protecting that piece of hardware that you're using day in and day out to do your work, how you're getting support for that device. Are you paying Best Buy's Geek Squad for a plan, or is it bundled with your MSP, or maybe you're big enough that you've got a dedicated in-house IT person. What your support situation looks like is going to vary vastly based on your size, typically. You're thinking about things like backups, and that goes beyond backing up, again, that piece of hardware that's on your desk. We're talking about backing up your cloud-based services as well, because like we're going to talk about as we go on here, your Microsoft, for example, your email, your calendar, your SharePoint, your OneDrive, that's not being backed up by default. So things that you need to think about as you're putting that technology and security budget together are going to be some sort of a backup service. And then as we get into like the next level security, the stuff the FTC and the IRS are preaching right now for accounting and for other financial services, are going to be things like using a VPN, making sure your teams have the right amount of cybersecurity training, the right frequency of that training, and making sure that you've got an actual written information security plan on file, and the deadline for that is coming up here. And then managing who has access to what. When we talk about data access, we're talking about things like, you hire an outsourced bookkeeper to help you with, I don't know, Liz, what, month-end closes? That'd be a pretty common thing, right? Month-end close.
100%.
You're not going to give them administrative rights to every aspect of all of your clients' QuickBooks, right? So you're going to limit that access, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to be thinking about how you're going to manage the same thing across all of your data that's out there, and all of your different repositories.
All of the data that's out there, it's like that's such a big piece is permission-based programs. So, your file share, email, sometimes you want to be able to share email across, but it's who needs access to what. So I look at these two lists and I go, I could talk all day about the technology because I geek out there. All of those apps are things that I'm familiar with and that I'm comfortable with. We move over into the security conversation, and this is where I start to feel I'm out of my element. I know I need these things, and hearing you talk about them makes me go, okay, yes, I can relate to that one. Oh, yes, okay, I can relate to each of these different pieces. But to be the expert in it, that's where I have to relinquish control. I'm never going to be able to be as knowledgeable as Sam or Mandy.
Oh, I disagree with that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna show some things here because I love geeking out with the two of you. You're just like some of my favorite, and it's like I said, there's always kindness. So just like what you just did there, you are very kind and always saying, but Liz, but I don't want to. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to put a limit on, yes, I want to know, but I don't want to have to be the expert and manage it. So I've got a job to do, and I need to be busy doing that. And it takes, the accounting industry takes a whole lot of brain power and emotional energy that I need to spend it wisely. And that's where I put the cap on it. Okay. So this compliancy piece, when, we're talking about hacks, this is a graph that is showing the rate of increased opportunity for cyber attacks. So this is just going through 2022. It's not even including 2023 or projections going forward. But what it is showing is that our accounting industry as a whole are on the radar and they are under attack. So it has now been known that these little micro firms are out there, these mid-sized firms, and even the large size firms have got a ton of client data. And we are no longer swimming underneath the radar. We are now very much on the forefront of the hacks that are out there, the phishing scams that are out there, because we do have so much information that just a small attack is likely to get some information. So we cannot just stay still and expect for things to get better. We have to move into this. Where is our security response? Are we going to stay in this reactive phase that is expensive, that might shut down business, that's going to have a large possibility of losing your client trust? We are supposed to be doing things in the accounting space, but we also have got to pay attention to the security place. And that's where this proactive comes into play. And this again is like Sam and Mandy, whenever I'm thinking about being proactive, again, your faces are literally what comes to mind.
Absolutely. Just to talk about this, the other day, Liz, I was working on listening to a podcast for one of my goals for 2024, which is to increase my investment account and to learn more about investing for personal finance, and went to listen to a podcast on it. Well, the website was a malicious site and it locked my computer up. And I got the blue screen of death. I had a meeting coming up with a client in 15 minutes. My computer is just beeping at me and I couldn't do anything. I sent Sam a video via my phone of like, what is going on here? He's like, you need to contact the security team. Security team already knew what was going on. They reached out, they got on my computer, they had it fixed, and I was back up and operating within 30 minutes. And then it got me started thinking, like, my clients, my 1, 2, 3 people firms are bookkeeping firms that doesn't have that whole security team. If that would have happened to their computer, they wouldn't have the first clue of what to do. They wouldn't know who to call. They would just be completely down because my computer was locked up. They had, I couldn't do anything.
I think that's something that I've experienced, and it wasn't even a situation where I was on a website that was malicious. I just had a situation where a computer had a blank and blue screened, and I did the exact same thing, Mandy. I called in to support. They were able to look at my backup, and boom, I was up and running really quick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really nice. And that's why it's good for for our clients and bookkeepers and accountants in general to be proactive and have that already set up in place. So in the event that something like that does happen, they have a plan and they know exactly who to call. And if you already have it budgeted and you have a managed IT and managed security, then you don't have to worry about what it's going to cost you. Contacting like somebody like the Geek Squad, it could have cost me, you know, a $500,000 unexpectedly to have my computer fixed. But if you already have that proactively budgeted and a plan in place, then you know exactly what it's going to cost you, and your downtime is going to be much more minimal.
You know, I think that that's the part where people sometimes um, have questions, is this idea of going to Geek Squad. They might be able to wipe your computer, but that doesn't mean that they're actually going to recover the
Right.
information. So, you know, you might have a clean computer, but what have you lost?
Yeah.
So
Could you
there's
imagine if you lost all your email? I mean, I don't know how many times a day I have to go back and look at previous emails to see, you know, what's going on or what was said or what was sent. If I just lost all of my emails, it would be a disaster for me.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, whenever I'm going to flip over to talking about these types of vulnerabilities, because what you're talking about is, you know, having a website that you visited and it blue screened your computer, but there's all these other things that are happening. So in the accounting industry, we're getting email scams. We are getting the data theft. So somebody is taking some of the information that lives in an environment that they were able to access, and they're using that information. You know, ransomware, we're talking about here that somebody has put a program on your computer and now they are actually holding hostage the data until you pay them. And even once you pay them, that does not mitigate the fact that they have got the information. They've been able to see it at this point. So your client, your firm, your team are already at risk. So there has to be some play into protecting those, I'm going to call them open gates. Insider threats, you know, this is one of those that I have had to be very open with my team to talk about. And it's not that I want to put eyeballs and say, you might steal information. That is not where I want to go with that conversation, but instead to say, if we had a client, for example, whose bank account information was hacked, what do we have in place in order to be able to say, what time were you logged into that bank activity? When were you accessing? When did you have those credentials? You know, so who was it? Where were you on your computer to be able to protect yourself? So those are the kinds of things whenever I talk about insider threats, yes, there could be somebody in the firm who's doing something malicious, but they're also needing to have this layer of protection if there were a scenario that we could say it wasn't part of our firm who did this.
Yeah, and more commonly than not, you know, the rest of this, the email scams, falling victim to email scams and data theft and you know, data breaches are a result of flat out human error, lack of education, not having, you know, annual at a minimum, quarterly ideally, refreshes on the latest threats that are out there. We saw one late last year that started becoming really popular, where you get an unexpected meeting invite and it looks like someone that you know, and you click on it thinking, oh, you missed a conversation about the meeting, and it says, oh, you need to update your meeting software, and boom, now you've got some form of malware. Or the smishing attempts, those that come through on the text messages that became really popular over the last couple of years. And all of this that's on the screen and everything that Liz, you and Mandy have been talking about for the last few minutes, I think are all really the reasons that the FTC said, okay, hey, you people with PII, that personally identifiable information, you need to adhere to these safeguards because you need to stop being reactive. You need to let go of, and be it complacency or lack of education, You need to let go of how you're doing things today and start looking at a more proactive way of doing things. And, as we progress in today's session and we're talking about budgeting, I think that's where we're going to really start talking about how leveraging managed IT can actually help control some of those costs over DIYing, because even just looking at security measures, I mean, we're talking about needing to implement things like patch management. Not only for your operating system, for that piece of hardware on your desk, but the software inside of it. I saw a notice from Zoom just last month that they're going to start enforcing that you're on specific versions of their software, because they realize people just aren't using the patches. They're not implementing those patches. They're using older versions of the software, and old versions of software means you're open to vulnerabilities, and people are able to bust into your meetings, right, and start doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So all of that is leading into all these regulatory changes that that we're talking about adhering to in our security sections.
Yeah, I agree. The updates are really important, even whenever it comes to phones.
Mhm.
Okay, so polling question. Have you budgeted for cybersecurity? I love this question. So is this something that the audience here that you are actively doing? So yes, you have a plan in place. I want to, but I'm not sure where to begin, or help me, I'm overwhelmed.
And Mandy, I think you have the poll button. There it is. And that's number 3. Looks like we're on, yep.
Let me try that one more time.
They got, you know what? They got flipped upside down when Liz and I were going through making edits earlier today. So now 3 is 1 and 2 is still 2, fortunately. But yeah.
Oh, so, okay, share results, stop sharing. Okay, launch poll, back. So I need to launch this one.
No. Oh yeah, budget. Yes, I'm sorry. Budget. You are absolutely correct.
Very nice. Very nice.
This is why my better half hates driving with me when she's the driver. I'm a backseat driver, in case no one picked up on that.
Oh, I have. I've drove you before. Yes, you are.
I've never
You
had
don't
the
even know
pleasure.
where you're going most of the time. It'll be in my city and he's still telling me what to do.
That's true. That's true.
All right.
Nothing more fun than having teenage drivers. Very nice.
So it looks like half the people here have a plan in place, and the other half here need to begin, but they're not sure where to start.
And I think even though it's a smaller sample size, it's consistent with what we've seen in all of our conversations over the past year and a half about budgets, because before the IRS said you need to do these 6 things if you're going to file taxes, folks weren't really thinking about security in terms of budgeting. It was, well, I know I have to do certain things. I know I have to keep data safe, but there wasn't really a formal thought or plan around it.
Well, and for me, I like talking dollars. So, that's part of where I love that this conversation is headed is tell me what I need and how much do I need to budget for it? Because then I have a target to aim for. So when we're thinking about 2024 technology and cybersecurity, here is an alarming statistic. So $9.5 trillion are expected to be related to cybercrime in 2024. That means dollars that are spent on litigation, that are spent in cleaning up cybercrime, the dollars that have been theft. So there is a lot that is part of this 9.5, but this is larger than it has ever been before. And it's expected in 2025 to actually jump another $1 trillion. So this is something that we have to plan for. When I'm thinking about cybercrime, this cyber threat heat map, this is something that we could all go look at, and it's live, and it is, I think I heard you say one time, Mandy, it never stops.
No, it doesn't.
Ever.
These are
Doesn't.
live threats. This is just showing you the types of threats, where they're happening, and this is continuous. These
Yeah.
are live active maps that you can check out.
And I guess to
I remember the
oversimplify
first. Go ahead, Sam.
I guess if we're not formally budgeting and implementing security measures, right, then we're effectively budgeting for putting bad actors on the payroll at some point.
Ow. Okay,
Yeah.
that was a little crippling.
Interesting way of looking at it, but it's true. I mean, if you're not budgeting for security, you could have a $25,000 ransom bill coming your way, and guarantee you haven't budgeted for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if we're talking about the threats, because it's just mind boggling, the types of threats that are going to be on the rise in 2024, these are threats that are in place, that have been in place, but the frequency is what is expected to increase. So some of these threats, do we want to kind of break down where they actually affect a firm?
Yeah, let's run through them. So phishing, we've all heard of phishing. What is it? So phishing is one of those social engineering tactics. It's an attempt to get you to give up your credentials. To put it simply, you're being baited into clicking on something that's in some way or another is going to get your credentials. And so when we start talking about multi-factor authentication and turning it on absolutely everywhere that it exists, that is one of the mitigating strategies against phishing. If you accidentally give up your credentials, having MFA turned on, that multi-factor authentication, is going to be one of those extra hurdles they're going to have to try to get past to actually do anything with those credentials. So that's pretty key. Ransomware, you talked about it earlier. It's a piece of software that gets installed on your machine. And that can happen through a number of ways. But ultimately, it is a type of malware. It gets installed on the computer, and it's going to sit there typically idle, just watching for sometimes months, doing absolutely nothing. You have no idea it's there. There's no indicator that it's there. It's just collecting little bits and bytes and waiting until it has enough information that it locks everything down. And at that point, that's when it says, hey, we've got all your stuff. You should pay us now. Data breaches can be, this can be anything. This can be Liz sends an unencrypted email with clients' bookkeeping information to her employee. Oops, right? We have a policy against sending that kind of information in that kind of way. A data breach could also be Mandy plugs a flash drive into her computer and puts a bunch of our internal IP on it. And so we've got pricing models and cost structures, and we've got case studies from different clients, and then she loses that flash drive. She loses it on her way home from work, and somebody gets a hold of it, and it's not password protected. That's a data breach, right? So data breaches can happen in a number of ways. It doesn't always have to be a bad actor has reached in and taken that information from you, though that's certainly a way. Insider threats, I think, Liz, you talked about this one, and insider threats can look like a lot of things. It doesn't always have to be that controller that I've told the story about that absolutely deleted everything on all of the servers before they exited the business. That was a pretty tragic one. Malware and viruses, again, that's something that gets installed on your computer through one or more different means of attack. Man in the middle is interesting. And this is where we like to talk about VPNs too, because this is one of the mitigating measures that you can use is to never use unsecured or public Wi-Fi networks. Let's not give those bad actors a way to squeeze in the middle between you and what you think is a safe end destination. And then we've got those device vulnerabilities. And here we're talking about those operating system and software patches that we already talked about, but we're also talking about that real-time threat hunting backed with eyes on glass, looking at logs, looking for those beginning stages of those malware and ransomware attacks, and then remediating those in real time. So those are going to be things we're talking about with device vulnerabilities, and it can go well beyond that into actual device policy enforcement. So when we're talking about the flash drive that got plugged in, right? Well, we made Mandy the unsuspecting oopsie with the data breach. Having a policy for your firm's endpoints that says you can't use flash drives. And by the way, that's a policy we have at Visory. You cannot plug a flash drive in and actually access it. And that's because we're trying to mitigate against those data breaches and insider threats.
Thank you for breaking those down, because I feel like it's important to be mindful of each of these types of threats, and that there are so many varieties. We didn't even pull in the part where you were talking about earlier, the smooshing, which, is just sending text messages that are out there. So there's more, but I mean, these are some of those big ones. And, I think about, here's a little bit more where we're going to touch even a little further. So understanding that, so this is that sensitive information. We've got to have something in place in order to make sure that the information that we are storing is protected. And, old school, I still have clients every once in a while that come to me from an accountant who has passed away or left the business, and there is literally a picture of a notebook where the passwords are being stored. That's not safe. And neither are some of these ways that people are storing and accessing. It's not being put inside of a program like LastPass or, 1Pass, any of these types of places where you are or storing passwords. That has to be something we're thinking about.
Well, Liz, I have a funny story for you on that one. I won't belabor it because I know we've only got so much time, but you can imagine what my social media ads probably consist of. I do a lot of time looking at things about security, right? So I might be on Facebook and I was the other day, and a Temu ad showed up, and it was for a password booklet.
Oh.
It was a booklet specific for passwords. And I thought,
Oh.
one, I spend too much time looking at password security. Two, what the heck? And why are we actually selling password booklets to put in a drawer in your kitchen in 2024?
I have to say that even my kids now are on LastPass. So we have, all of the passwords to networks and to Netflix and Disney. All of that has now been stored in a place that we don't have to text that information any longer. So there's no reason for booklets.
But turn on multi-factor authentication, change your password once in a while. Get off my soapbox there.
Passwords matter. Passwords matter.
Okay.
The location of passwords matter. Where the data is being stored matters. And then this one right here this is fun. So you and I, Sam, were commiserating about some emails that we had received. And you received one from DocuSign, which is a super legit e-signature business and software that many of us use. But this isn't legit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's where that cybersecurity awareness training comes in. And it's one of the reasons why the FTC requires it now. We need to keep our teams educated so that they know what those red flags are in these emails, because even with the most sophisticated phishing prevention software, which, by the way, Visory employs, right? Because we're a security company, we're securing our team too. Stuff like this can still sneak past, right? The attempts are more and more sophisticated, and these DocuSign ones are probably the most common one that we see. But you've got to be able to look for those red flags, and some of those, I mean, the ones that jump out, the domain for the sender, right? That's going to be a biggie. Hovering over and looking at where the link is trying to take you is another one, and looking for those misspellings and those little nuance changes that they can make.
100%. You know, the hovering whenever you're on a computer, that's a whole lot easier than on your phone. But hovering over that link address where it's trying to send you is something that I don't know that everybody does, but that is a really, really good one that you just called out. And you know, this is an email that I was sent. It looks like it's part of Intuit wanting to get an account set up for a city credit card. And first look at it, I do a lot with Intuit. Of course, you know, I would be aware of the types of credit cards that are being offered. But this is something that I actually went ahead and sent over to Intuit to review. It's not legit. I can look at that sender address. That does not make sense. It's not an official Intuit email address or an official city card email address. But that blue hyperlink, what that is taking you to is to start putting in the information. You know, what are the details, social security number, address, you know, the full name, all of those kinds of things could easily be added. And this is like from a business point of view, clients. So even us who might be savvy and we're also training our team, that doesn't mean that we should stop there. We really need to continue that conversation over to your clients. So when you see something like this, I even share these kinds of emails out to my clients saying, this is not legit. It just helps them to know that we're paying attention to this too.
Yeah, and I think as 2024 progresses and we get closer to 2025, I think what we're going to continue to see is this trend where clients are looking to accounting professionals for advice on how to be more secure, how to protect their financial data.
So even these little small emails like this one, I think that puts you in that position of being able to say, don't click on these types of links. You hover over those URLs. You know, make sure that you are not emailing us information. You know, if you've got a portal or whatever it is that you're doing in order to send information, make sure that you are telling your clients you won't receive any type of confidential information any other way.
Right.
I think that Dawn Brolin has even got it in her email signature. Do not send me any emails. So, you know, however you do it,
for sure.
It is a good practice. So here's where I'd love to pass it back over to you in order to help fill us in. What should be included in managed IT whenever you're an accounting firm and you're looking for this type of protection?
All right, I just looked at the time, so I'm going to keep it brief. But I think that, you know, to summarize, managed IT gives you an opportunity to really leverage expertise in an area that's not yours. So, you know, Liz, like you talked about, you're an expert, you're a geek at budgeting. That is not my area, right? But my area is going to be successful ways to deploy strategies to prevent cyber attacks and data breaches, and how to implement data loss prevention policies and things like that. So managed IT is often going to give you expertise in an area that's not yours. It's going to give you an ability to leverage economies of scale to implement these really high level enterprise grade solutions that you otherwise may not be able to obtain as a small business because of the thresholds, those license minimums that a lot of these companies have. It's going to give you access to proactive monitoring and maintenance. So it's going to take all of the burden of making sure that your hardware and your software are patched, your hardware is functioning properly and isn't too old to get the necessary patches to keep your business secure. So that's where we're talking about the technology upgrades and the refresh cycles. And most of the time, there are going to be some exceptions to this, but most of the time, managed IT is going to come in a really simple, easy to understand, and scalable subscription-based pricing, either on a per user or on a per device type of method.
And that budget is what we want to be able to understand a bit more. And then how do we incorporate it? So I love it. I know we've got another polling question. So Mandy, if you don't mind pulling up this polling question, I'll go ahead and read it. And then I probably, because of the sake of time, I'll probably just keep on talking.
Yeah.
So do you have a WISP in place. So a written information security plan for 2024. Yes, in process. No, what's a WISP?
Yeah, and remember last year, this is the thing that the IRS started requiring for your PTIN renewals if you're a tax preparer. So
And you know, it's interesting right now that it's just focused on tax preparers, but that's coming down. That's trickling down.
well, yeah, we've already exceeded that. So that was last year for last year's PTINs. And then the FTC at the end of towards the middle of the end of last year, they said, okay, if you deal in financial data, you are now required to have a WISP. So it's absolutely everybody in bookkeeping and accounting.
And that's a big one that I don't think that has been fully recognized yet. So what do we do to budget for it? Because that's where we're at. We've got to have some of these considerations in place. What's the technology going to cost? What is the security piece? We got to train our staff. We need to make sure that we are supporting that technology. So that means you can't just put something in place and just walk away. Is that going to actually grow with you? And then you need to be able to look back and say, you know, have I had breaches? And, you know, being able to save you from those things, that's actually got a dollar value that's associated with it too. So here's where I want to kind of geek out on technology for a second and security. And this is just based on that budget that we were talking about early on. So I've got the percentages broke down. 3% on technology, we're talking about 10,000 a year. Technology, we're talking about 7%, so that 24,000 mark. And then, you know, there's this note at the bottom that is really important, because part of what we need to be doing is not just spending the dollars in these areas, we need to also be training our team in these areas. So if the firm owner is the one who's implementing the tech, but everybody else in the firm doesn't know what's happening, that's a mess. If you've got the team that's trained, that's whenever the team is going to say, you know, they're actively involved in what's happening. So let's take these numbers and drill down into them a little bit further. So whenever it comes to tech, here's a place that I feel like we are all familiar. We've got to have workflow. These are annual numbers, document storage, phone system, e-signature. These have all got dollar values that are associated with them. And this feels very familiar to me. I know these numbers. I feel very comfortable. I can even put into my mind what are the solutions in play in each of these areas for my firm. When I flip over and I start talking about the security breakdown, this is where we start to talk about those dollars and these buckets and how do we have coverage. And this is one of those that I love being able to pass over and to say, instead of having this piecemeal approach that we could have in a DIY type scenario, I'm able to say, Mandy, I need a package, and that's going to incorporate all of the things that I need for my firm to feel like I've got my security managed.
Absolutely. It makes it so much easier if it's all put together for you, big red bow packaged, and you know that you're not only compliant, but that your firm's protected. And in the event of an issue or a breach or ransomware, that you have somebody that has your back that's going to help you get out of it.
And you know, one of the things that you have said, Sam, that it resonates is reasonable security for reasonable risk. And that's why we're taking this percentage and we're saying of revenue, what's reasonable. And these dollars that we are spending, you know, are split amongst 12 months. There are these different subscriptions. I certainly want to get into these subscriptions. So I'm going to go ahead and go through a couple of these budgeting pieces, and then I'm going to pass it back over to the two of you, because I love this breakdown. And I want to talk about some of the packages that I have in place that are doing all of this. So it's incorporating that. I promised that I would talk about setting up budgets, QuickBooks Online. So I don't want to break that promise. I do want to go ahead and talk about QuickBooks Online is a solution that I am very much a user of. So that's going to be the place that I'm going to show you. And when I'm thinking about budgets, it is QuickBooks Online Plus or Advanced. all of you accounting professionals out there are like myself. We've got a subscription to QuickBooks Online that is free. We have the advanced subscription, so that means that we've got full coverage. But whenever I come in and I start looking at, let me pull over my QuickBooks so that way you are seeing it. And I'm coming over into these budgets. Here's where I've already created a budget because I wanted to be able to look at that together, but I took those dollar values and I split them out. So I said I wanted my revenue to be X dollar amount. So, you know, the thing that's cool about QuickBooks is this split value. So I was able to say annually, I want to be able to have $350,000 in revenue, and then I could split it. And I did the exact same thing for all of these areas that we were talking about in the accounting industry where we might spend dollars. And so I pulled in my technology and my security, and then I ended in a place that felt comfortable. So in QuickBooks, you can actually do a budgets versus actual report, which is very handy as you continue on throughout the year, this budgets versus actual. But those are the numbers that I wanted to play with, and I wanted to make sure that all of you are aware what kind of dollars am I associating with my technology and my security, and how is Visory actually fitting into that is where I want to pass this conversation back over to you, Sam and Mandy.
I'll jump in. So, you know, we talk about 3% for security. We could very easily blow that entire 3% on one of these areas. And the reason I say that is because the variety, the vastness of solutions that are out there is just immense. And the cost associated with those is just as immense. I mean, it goes from free for some of these things like encryption and even training. I think there are some free options out there to really, really expensive solutions. And so going back to what you were talking about, one of the themes from last year in a lot of our conversations was reasonable security for reasonable risks. And the way that we get there is by doing a risk assessment and really looking at what are the areas that make this specific firm that we're talking to vulnerable. Where are those vulnerabilities? And then let's talk about how we can fill those gaps, how we can protect against those vulnerabilities in a way that's going to not be so restrictive that they can't work. You know, we want to make sure that we balance security with ease of use and workflows and efficiency. So I think that's one of the other ways that expertise from having someone in managed IT come in and manage that for your firm comes in, because there's no, it takes all the guesswork out of it. Let's go through, let's establish the baseline for where your risks are. Let's talk about the packages that we have that'll solve for those risks, and then the costs associated with getting those implemented.
I'm going to flip over to your packages because all of these things that we've covered, we also have these packages that Visory has put into place, and I have subscribed to them. You were talking about blowing the budget if we were piecemealing it or doing it DIY style. The other thing that we don't have if we're piecemealing it and doing a DIY scenario is we don't have the consistency of a cohesive solution. So that is one of the other reasons why this is an area that I have passed over to the experts.
Yeah. Yep. It definitely takes the piecemealing and all the hard work of figuring out what you need out of the equation. And it's just there for you, laid out with what you need for compliance and what you reasonably need for your firm to protect your firm.
And, you know, one of those things that I hear from my accounting peers is, how much am I going to have to spend on this? And you have got some entry-level security packages that you know, they do a fine job. So, you know, do you want to talk about some of those entry-level packages and like where they're starting at?
Yeah, Sam, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure. So I think that when we talk about the necessities, so what are the bare minimum things you should be doing as a firm? We're talking about things like password management. I got on my soapbox a little while ago about that. The next thing is going to be training. So training is really one of those absolute minimum things that you should be doing as a firm. And the third is going to be real-time threat hunting on the endpoints. So even if you look at the FTC safeguards and you say, I really haven't planned for or budgeted, I don't even understand what half of these things are. As long as we're implementing a really good quality threat hunting, so that endpoint detection and response. So we're talking about things that are AI driven, that have that automatic remediation in them, things like CrowdStrike and SentinelOne. As long as at a minimum, we're doing that, we're educating our teams, and we're taking care of our passwords and our multi-factor authentication. I think that's the baseline. And yeah, I mean, our packages start at what, $25 a device, Mandy?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To me, what you're getting and the cost is something that I think a lot of accounting firms are they're unfamiliar with. And so they feel like it's this enormous job, and it's going to have this enormous cost that is just outside of the realm of possibilities. But when you break it down and you start to say, here is what you need, and here's this affordable cost, that's whenever I think that you can't afford not to adopt this solution. You have to.
That's
So
right.
I know you have a poll, this last poll, who would
Yeah.
love more information. So if you want to launch that, because I feel like we've had such a good conversation here, that I would not want to miss an opportunity of, would you like Visory to contact you about cybersecurity? I'm going to say everybody should say yes. So yes, no, not sure what you're thinking there, or already a Visory client. Okay, you get a pass there because you're part of the team. So
Yeah, and then just building on that conversation, our packages grow to be as robust as the firm that we're working with. And remember, Visory works with not only accounting, but we're in that wealth management space and meeting that SEC level compliance. So I mean, we can get pretty big and beefy, but we do have those packages that are right sized for accounting.
I appreciate you sharing with the industry that I love so much how to be protected and how to do that at a price point that's not going to break them, but it's going to allow their team to feel that they've got some security in place, the owners to protect the firm, and then clients. We need all of those pieces. So I feel like today's time was well spent, and I am grateful to be here with you both.
And we were thankful to have you. I will be sending this out, a link to the recording as well as the deck to everybody that attended today tomorrow. So be looking out for that in an email. And if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Sam and I. We will be happy to assist you. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.